So Hillary and Obama lied again, because, of course, they did. President Obama claimed last week $400 million sent to Iran at the exact same time Iran was releasing American hostages. Now, it wasn't a ransom payment. It was all just a big coincidence. Hillary Clinton said, quote, "The White House has talked about this, and this is kind of old news. It was first reported about 7 or 8 months ago." Except it wasn't. And it turns out that not only was the payment a ransom, everybody saw it that way at the time. According to the Wall Street Journal today, quote, "New details of the $400 million U.S. payment to Iran earlier this year depict a tightly scripted exchange specifically timed to the release of several American prisoners held in Iran. U.S. officials wouldn't let Iranians take control of the money until a Swiss Air Force plane carrying 3 freed Americans departed from Tehran on January 17th, unquote. This means that the American government has now become the PR spokes agency for the Iranian terror regime. The Obama administration lied about whether Iran had captured American sailors. You remember this. Secretary of State John Kerry even thanked the Iranians for their help as Americans were humiliated and disarmed, and they took pictures of them, and then they built statues of them being disarmed. The Obama administration continues to lie that Iran is abiding by the nuclear deal, even as reports emerge that Iran tried to buy technology to build a military nuclear program, according to Germany's intelligence services. The entire Iran deal was built on the back of a gigantic lie peddled by the media, openly mocked inside the Obama administration. The lie that Obama had only opened negotiations after spotting a moderate new regime in Tehran. In reality, Obama always wanted to deal with the Iranians. The lies mean nothing, of course. The media have no desire to report them. The Obama administration has no need to answer questions that are rarely asked. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. So today's word of the day is despondency, gang. Despondency. Yes, it turns out that today I'm in a very depressed mood. I'm not in a depressed mood because of the whole Steve Bannon joining the Trump campaign thing. I'm in a depressed mood because I don't think that truth matters anymore in American politics, or at least it seems not to matter as much in American politics as it once did. And that's a problem to me. Now, I'm going to preface this discussion by saying, as always, if you're voting for Donald Trump to stop Hillary Clinton, I read you, I sympathize with you. I may do the same thing myself when I get into the voting booth. What I've said all along is I will not lie for Donald Trump. I will not fib. I will not give you information that is not true. I will not pretend that the government can do things that it can't do. I will not rip on things that I know are obviously true. Okay, with that in mind, let's jump right into what was, by any measure, the most viewed clip of the day yesterday from cable news. And I know this because I was the second most viewed clip yesterday on cable news. But the most viewed clip on cable news, and it's well-deserving of it, was Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen is the lawyer for Donald Trump and Donald Trump's campaign, apparently. And so he's on with Breonna Keeler. I was on with her as well yesterday. We'll play that clip in a few minutes. But she's on with Michael Cohen. And I want you to watch Michael Cohen's reaction to basic facts, okay? Breonna Keeler, I'm sure, is on the left. I don't know much about her. She works for CNN. My guess is she's on the left. Okay, that doesn't change the basic fact. The polls right now are not good for Trump. By the way, there's a new poll out today. That's not horrendous for Trump. It's a new poll from Pew, and I think it has Trump down by 4 points, 41 to 37. So still trailing, but at least within spitting distance. At least within spitting distance. It's, again, Trump cannot break with a pickaxe 43% in any poll. Lately, he can't even break 40% in any poll. But this is a better poll because Hillary continues to be the world's worst candidate, except for Donald Trump. Okay, all of that said, Breonna Keeler is questioning Michael Cohen, and for very good reason, this became the clip of the day.
You say it's not a shakeup, but you guys are down. And it makes
Says
sense
who?
that there would...
Says
polls,
who?
most of them. All of them?
Says who?
Polls. I just told you, I answered your question.
Okay. Which polls?
All of them.
Okay. And your question is?
Okay, so my question is...
And there's nowhere to go from there. I mean, and so she goes on to ask her question, answer the question, but yes, it turns out that Donald Trump is down in all of the polls. Okay, I'm looking right now at the Real Clear Politics poll average. The last poll that Donald Trump led in, the last poll, it is now August 18th, is today's date, correct? It is now August 18th. The last poll that Donald Trump led in was taken ending July 24th. Okay, he has not led a poll in a month. I'm looking at the Real Clear Politics poll average right now. I'm looking at the entire list of polls. Now, I think that the race will probably tighten because this is what races tend to do. They tighten and they widen and they tighten and they widen. But I think that right now the polls are the polls. And you can't argue that polls don't exist just because you don't want them to exist. Unfortunately, you're about to see Eric Bolling do exactly that I don't know whether he huffed glue before this particular segment, but here's Eric Bolling on Fox News pretending that polls no longer exist. They're figments of your imagination.
These polls, Dana, I'm honestly, we have to stop with these polls. They're insane with the polls. You look at these, just look what's going on. You look at a Trump rally, and there's 12, 15,000, 10,000 people.
You cannot believe.
And then you look at Hillary Clinton, and you have, I don't know, 1,500, 2,000. But that speaks volumes.
That's a real
versus
disservice.
a poll 82 days out.
It's a real disservice to
whom?
His supporters to lie to them that that those polls don't matter. You cannot take 12,000 people at a rally that are your definite supporters. They are going to show up the campaign and then say the polls are wrong.
She has that opportunity.
But one person sitting at home still cancels out somebody
at
a rally.
It's not
Here's
fair.
Why polls really shouldn't matter or shouldn't ever matter. You pick up the phone and you say, who are you going to vote for? That person on the other end of the phone says, well, I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton.
But
they're not out there voting.
But when the
people
polls
who
are
are
good,
getting
you
out in the
say the
street and
opposite.
going to a rally, those are people who get up off the couch and go hear something and go say something. That's why I think
You're saying they're
the
motivated?
size of crowds is more indicative of following or even polling than actual people.
But I would say that a person sitting.
Okay, what he is saying is it's a lie. It's actually an insane lie, what he's saying. I remember back in 2012, right before the election, there's a very, very big rally for Mitt Romney in Pennsylvania, very well covered. Huge stadium full of people, 30,000 people. And people saying the whole time, look at that. Look at the size. That shows the enthusiasm Romney's going to win. I remember back in 2012, because I did some of this, we all looked at the polls and we said, we think these polls are skewed, right? This is where the whole mockery of unskewing polls comes from. In 2012, we looked at the polls and we said, and it was at least a plausible theory, that turned out not to be true. The plausible theory was they're looking at a model that is based on a turnout model from 2008. Why don't they look at a turnout model that includes 2010? Why don't they look at a turnout model that includes the higher Republican turnout in the midterm election? And it turns out the polls were not skewed. The polls were all exactly correct. And if you followed the polls, then you got it right. Now, even after that lesson, there are people who are Trump fans, Trump supporters, who are simply going to lie to people. So I was on the air this morning with a friend of mine, Jen Horn, and we were talking about the polls, and she was saying a lot of Americans, a lot of the base, they think that polls are establishment tools. And I was talking to somebody else this morning who is a fan of Trump, and she was saying the same thing. Yeah, polls, can we trust the polls? Are the polls just biased in favor of Hillary? And I said to her, let me explain something. The media are biased in favor of Hillary. This is eminently true. It is clearly true. The media hate Donald Trump. The media want Hillary to win. It wouldn't matter who the Republican is. The media would want Hillary to win. That's true. I'm not arguing with that because that's silly to argue with. It's obviously true that the media despise Trump and want Hillary to win. Polls don't work that way. You have many, many, many polling companies. Their entire credibility is based on their capacity to correctly measure public opinion. There is a methodology to making a poll. I don't know how to make a poll because I'm not an expert in polling. This is why you have poll experts. What poll experts do is they determine what is the breakdown racially, in terms of viewpoint, in terms of location, that best represents the electorate. Right? They have to actually reconstruct a kind of microcosm of the electorate, and that's how they do these polls. The polls aren't done randomly in the sense that they just call people up on the phone randomly and then that's the poll. It's not the end of the polling data. There's a whole art to it. More importantly, there's a whole science to it. And yet I'm hearing from people that polls are an establishment tool. Truth matters. I'm not going to lie to you that polls only matter when Donald Trump is winning in the polls. That's crap. It's nonsense. It's stupid. And you're breeding a nation of morons when you tell people that facts don't matter, when you tell people science doesn't matter. Now, the left has done this for years. This is what drives me absolutely up a wall. We're supposed to be better than they are. We're not supposed to have to lie to our own people. Forget about lying to the rest of America. Lie to our own people about what polls say. Eric Bolling knows what the polls say, and he knows that Trump is down in the polls. Michael Cohen knows what the polls say. That's why he's not even able to come back when Breonna Keller says all of the polls say he's losing. There's nothing he can say about that, right? Because there's nothing to say. The polls matter. But it's like somebody with a fever taking the thermometer, taking their temperature, and then going, screw this thermometer. This thing's biased. This is an establishment thermometer. This thermometer isn't science. Basically, there's a whole segment of Trump supporters, the most ardent Trump supporters, who have now decided to treat polls the way the insane clown posse treats magnets. Right? Frickin' magnets, how do they work? And don't tell me none of that science stuff. Okay, that's what we have in part of the Trump train. What are polls? How do they work? And don't give me none of that science stuff. It's magic. It isn't magic, folks. There's an actual science to it. And you're not doing anybody any service when you do this. You're lying to them. You're telling them that they can just ignore the polls. You're telling Donald Trump he can ignore the polls. He can be as dumb as he wants to be. He can be as bad at campaigning as he wants to be. All that matters is the size of the crowd. Let me explain something to you. There are about 7,000 people who show up to every WNBA game. Does that mean that the polls are wrong when it comes to the unpopularity of the WNBA? After all, 7,000 people, it's not a few people, it's a lot of people showing up to every single crappy WNBA game. Right? The size of the crowd is not indicative of the level of support publicly. I mean, Gutfeld makes that point there, and he's exactly right. The person who's sitting home counts just as much at the ballot box as the person who goes to the Trump rally. You don't get extra credit for going to a Trump rally. This is just, it's just dumb stuff. It's just dumb. And it has an impact. And the impact is that people believe lies, and they believe that they can no longer trust any information that comes forth. They can't trust the polls anymore. They can't trust the media. I agree that you have to take everything the media say with a grain of salt and double check it, but pretending that everything that the media say is an outright 100% lie isn't true either. It's just the beginning of the conversation to ask what are the biases of the reporter. It doesn't mean that what they're reporting never occurred. You actually have to check it out before you determine that. Evidence, folks. I require it on all sides. Evidence, 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 evidence. And I'll give you another example. Today, there's a Pew poll out. It shows 61% of Republicans now say that they don't like free trade. Okay, that number was a majority that liked free trade before Donald Trump came along and started lying to people that free trade was stealing your jobs and sending them south of the border to that rich nation known as Mexico. Right? Before Donald Trump started fibbing and giving the Pat Buchanan lie that Vietnam was schlonging us economically and that China was stealing all of our jobs. And before that, people understood, hey, the reason I have a nice cell phone here is because of outsourcing, because there is comparative advantage, because of free trade. The reason a lot of Americans have jobs is because of free trade. Millions and millions and millions of Americans have jobs thanks to free trade. But Donald Trump has told this lie, and people believe the lie. And so now there's a bunch of people who are expecting, and here's the thing, it sets up expectations that cannot be fulfilled. The expectation now is that Donald Trump is going to bring your job back to Ohio by shutting down free trade. Ain't going to happen, folks. Not happening. That job is not coming back to Ohio because Donald Trump shut down free trade. And if it does come back to Ohio because Donald Trump shut down free trade, you just put 3 other people out of work. Here's another lie that they've been telling. Okay, the Republican establishment told us the lie in 2010 that if we elect them, they would stop Obamacare. That's what they said. That was their pledge. If you elect us, we will stop Obamacare dead. They didn't do it. They didn't do it. Right? When Ted Cruz tried to do it with the government shutdown, everybody lost their minds. Okay, then in 2014, they said, if you elect us, we'll stop Obama's executive amnesty. They get into power, they fund Obama's executive amnesty. And naturally, this makes people angry. When you lie to people and then you disappoint them, they get mad. They get mad. And so that's where Donald Trump comes from. But Donald Trump isn't honest. Donald Trump is lying too. And so there will be disappointment. But the disappointment won't be blamed on Trump. The disappointment won't be blamed on Trump's incompetence and lies. The disappointment will be blamed on the people who told the truth. And this is the part that's super frustrating to me. In a binary race, everyone understands on the right side of the aisle that Hillary Clinton is a terrible, terrible person who should never be president of the United States. It's why, despite all of the problems that I have with Donald Trump, and my God, I've spent the last few months describing them. Despite all the problems I have with Donald Trump, I wake up every single morning considering whether I can vote for this man. Every single morning, the first thought that goes through my head at this point is, me personally, can I vote for Donald Trump? But the one thing that I've never had to reconsider is, do I lie for Donald Trump? Because I'm not going to lie to anybody, because I'll tell you what the impact of the lie is going to be. The next lie is going to be when Donald Trump, he's going to say the polls are wrong. The polls are a lie. The polls aren't a lie. And then if he loses, and he may not, but if he loses, and he loses while the polls are saying he's going to lose, he's going to say, well, the polls were wrong. You know, people are going to say, well, the polls said you were going to lose. You lost, right? I mean, that's how it works. Trump is going to say, no. The polls were lying to you. They were just an establishment cuck tool, right? And therefore, what really happened? We were stabbed in the back. That's what happened. We were stabbed in the back by our own people. That's what happened here. That's why we lost. Now, you want to make the argument that the Never Trump people are the ones who are responsible for Trump losing. You're going to have to do better than that, because there are 5 of us left, okay? If Trump loses by 1 vote in California, and I'm the guy who didn't vote, you're free to blame me. Okay, that's how this works. If I vote for Donald Trump right now, according to the polls, he loses by 9,999,999 votes instead of 10 million. Okay, but that doesn't make a difference. The only thing I care about, because my vote doesn't mean anything, I'm in California. The only thing I care about is no one should be lying to you, including lies you yourself want to hear. The pretty little lies that tell you that everything will be all better if we just pretend that polls don't exist. The pretty lies that say that free trade is destroying your life. The pretty little lies that say that free trade, if we abolish it, it won't hurt the economy. The lies that if we elect a Republican Congress, they were going to stop Obama on Obamacare and any of the rest of and executive amnesty. Lies don't pay off. They don't pay off. And anyone who lies to you should be blamed for lying to you. But I guess lies don't matter anymore, because in the end, all that really matters is that we feel good about ourselves while we do what it is we're going to do. This is what's ticking me off today. This is why I'm depressed today, because I think the truth no longer has a value. I'm sick of hearing lies. I'm just sick of hearing it. I'm sick of hearing lies about me. I'm sick of hearing lies about Trump from the media. I'm sick of hearing lies from Trump about polling data. I'm sick of hearing lies from Trump about policy. I'm sick of hearing Hillary open her mouth, because every time she opens her mouth, she lies. We now live in a world that is completely filled with lies, and we just pick the lies that are most convenient for us to hear, because then we feel better about our own lives. But guess what? Those lies aren't going to make you feel good in the end, because it'll be proven that they were wrong and that they were false. And people who told the truth, you can either blame them or you can blame the people who told you lies. I'm increasingly fearing that in this country, the people who told the truth will be blamed because they're ruining the utopian visions of the people who lie to you and tell you things that are impossible are about to occur. Well, sorry for that depressing note, but as we're going to continue this, obviously, the rest of the show at dailywire.com, a lot more to get to, including updates on Steve Bannon joining the Trump campaign, as well as what Trump's debate strategy can be. Can he salvage this? I mean, he's starting to pull up in the polls. He can if he has the right debate strategy. We'll talk about what his debate strategy ought to be, plus the vaunted Ben Shapiro Show mailbag coming up. Daily Wire, $8 a month. You can be a subscriber. You can watch us every day, and you can tell whether I'm happy or disappointed or depressed based on my face, not just on my voice. So that'll be exciting for you. Also, you can go to YouTube. Sorry, we finish off Facebook Live and YouTube right now, but you can view the rest at dailywire.com by subscribing, or you can go to iTunes and SoundCloud and download the rest in terms of the audio.